Hello and welcome back to the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and this week I am joined by the newly rejuvenated panellist, Robbie Kopak, who's back again, like buses. It's very exciting. And panellist Tom Whitaker. We look back at that result against Chelsea, and we look forward a little bit as to exactly where we are this season. We also get chat with Charlotte Rigby, who joined me last week for the Turf Moor Sleep Out, raising some much needed funds for BFC in the community and a couple of other local charities. So without further ado, let's go. Robbie, you're spoiling me. 2 weeks, 2 appearances. I love it. Welcome back again.
I've got quite a lot to say. I don't know why. I think we've all got an opinion on where we're at the moment, and I think we all want to.
Everyone wants to jump
grieve
on.
And we all want to grieve and rant and get it off our chest.
I've always found over the many years that we've done the podcast that listener numbers can either be they'll spike either when we're doing phenomenally well. So obviously in the lead up to the championship last season, numbers were sky high, or when we're doing really, really badly. There's almost like a need for therapy between us that we all jump on. Well, we've come on this evening because we've obviously had an international break. We were a little bit down in the dumps post the Chelsea game. It was a difficult afternoon for many reasons. So we wanted to have a little break as a team. We talked about it and we didn't know whether or not we were able to put out something that was worthwhile. And I think a lot of our listeners, and ourselves included, were a little bit jaded with having to analyse another heavy defeat against one of the bigger teams in the division. We were very mindful that it would just come across as a little bit whining, a bit doom and gloom. So we decided to regroup. We've talked a lot between us about the kind of position we think we're in as a club, where we all are as fans, and the kind of material we wanted to put out there. So Robbie and I are going to have a little bit of an assessment of where we are. Tom's going to come in shortly. He recorded us a piece directly after that Chelsea result. So we might need to look at that with a little bit of a timestamp on it, because it was in the immediate aftermath of the game. But it's good to look back on that and feel how we'd felt, particularly about the mental side of our game. I think that's quite an important one that we want to address. But we're going to look forward, because this is, of course, our opportunity to get into that spell of fixtures, which we've been looking forward to, and they're the ones that are perhaps more winnable. So, Robbie, I'm going to give you the floor to start off with, because you've got quite you've been listening to some other material and you've got quite a few points on, and please do credit those, the material that you're going to talk from as well, because we do like to credit here on the No Nay Never podcast. I guess take the floor. Where are we? How are you feeling? What's your general views right now? Let's see where we're at.
I think there's definitely a cause for concern. I think the results in isolation, if they're probably spread out across the season, probably not unusual. Unnecessary pressure on games which we're sort of not expected to win, but expected to compete in. Like the pressure going into the Luton game was ridiculous, considering it was only September. And it's sort of, you're getting that same feeling going into Brentford at the weekend. And you shouldn't be going into Brentford away needing to pick up a result. And I think that's where the concern's coming from. I think the last time I was on, I sort of said that if we split the games in half, for the first three to the last three we played, there's definitely been some improvements. And I thought we were past this capitulation, heads gone stuff. If we had lost against Chelsea, let's hypothetically say we lose that game 2-1 after the penalty, and we sort of lose that game in the same manner we lost against United. We lose the game 2-1. I still think we go into Brentford with a little bit of optimism going into, because of what happened again for the second or third time this season, because it was literally Spurs at home all over again.
Yeah.
Where as soon as the second one goes in, it's sort of like there's a brief reaction, but the heads are just completely gone. They don't know when to press. They're not pressing as a unit, and it's just like there's gaps everywhere. And Chelsea could have easily scored 5 or 6 on the day. So it's putting pressure onto Brentford. I think I sort of looking at our next three, so Brentford away, Bournemouth away, Palace at home. I think we need to pick up a minimum of 4 points.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think
Which we
the
can.
Palace we can do, but we have to beat Palace at home. I think
Yes.
that's a non-negotiable that we have to beat Palace at home. It's not even just get a point. I think we have to win it just to get that psychological thing out the way that we can win games at home.
Robin, can I put this to you then while we talk about this? How much of an impact has the really unfortunate fixture selection had on us? And because, as you alluded to at the beginning of your piece, it's not unusual for us to lose against all 5 of those teams across the course of the season. And actually, was it from the Be All End? Is that who you said it was? From the from the Be All End podcast. Really great guys who they do a lot of really in-depth analysis with things like that. You think you said that they'd looked at this and they'd looked at previous results against those teams in previous seasons, and they're the same. And it's not unusual for us to lose to Chelsea, particularly at home, but that and lose 3-1, lose by a big margin. But the problem that we've got is that all of these games have all come at once and they've all come back to back, and it's just. Is it not just a case of we've just been really unlucky with the fixtures?
The manner in which we're losing them, I think like I said, if we had lost that game against Chelsea 2-1, I won't be that fussed. It's sort of like, oh well,
Okay.
I think Chelsea look very well coached. To be fair, they look an awful lot better side than where the table suggests.
That's true.
I watched them against. They played Fulham at Craven Cottage before they played us, and they looked an awful lot better than again what results suggested. So whether it's just taking them a little bit of time just to get going a little bit under Pochettino and stuff, and they probably played us at the right time as well, and it's like, right, okay, now they're on a roll. But yeah, it's just we concede. I don't know what Burnley's going to show up, because against Luton, it's like Luton, and we responded straight away really well, and we responded pretty well when Forest equalised against us as well. But when the big hitters come, we seem to fold and capitulate and just don't seem to deal with it very well.
So this suggests that there is a mental challenge from the players' perspective. Do you think that's fair?
Again, the guys at the for the Be All End podcast, they were talking about this Burnley squad haven't really had much adversity.
No.
Like we've not really had to deal with, apart from Sheffield United, where again that was another game where we seemed to capitulate, but we responded after that. I think we won like 10 on the bounce, going straight after the World Cup. And something after listening to that, what I thought about is that apart from Rotherham at home, Reading at home, we didn't really have to come from behind too much.
No.
And I think when teams did take the lead against us, they just sort of sat back and tried to defend with what they had. As at this level, when teams go ahead, they are fucking relentless and they don't stop. Like we found out against Chelsea and Spurs, they just keep going, they're just relentless.
Yeah.
And whether it's just the mentality thing where we expect them to sit back a bit like what Man United did and let us have the ball and let us try and break them down, they don't. They just go, okay, we're going to go get 3 and 4 and 5.
Yeah, they kill the game off very quickly.
And possibly a 6 if we have time.
Yeah, we run out of time. But that is a concern, particularly from a Burnley fan perspective, because we've had a decade where a team that's mentally very strong and has a resilience against any level of adversity was our trademark. And that's something that we've been very well known for. And fine, I accept that the DNA of this side has now moved on. And as a club, we were a different generation of players, managers, coaching, and everything about us is different. But that we're still of that, it's disappointing to be known as mentally weak in that perspective. And I've seen it myself. And there's a lot of things that I think impact on that. It's a very young side. They're a side, like you say, haven't been used to any level of adversity. They're playing in a league that's unfamiliar. But also as well, company isn't publicly anyway giving me any signs that he is giving that priority in terms of making them mentally resilient and tough to beat. It seems to me that from a coaching perspective, that how we deal with our in-game play is very much tactically with our feet and not necessarily with our attitude. So that's a massive culture shift for Burnley fans to have to get used to.
I think under Dyche we sort of we got bored of it all. Like when the last few months of like Dyche, we were dying for a bit of a revamp and a restructure, and like we wanted a project.
Yeah.
And this is what we've got now, and it's sort of like we just have to sort of be careful of this is what we asked for, so we can't really mourn too much. But yeah, I think it's just literally what we talked about before. It's just the manner of which we're losing games. It's just putting more and more pressure on these really, really young players, and it's sort of puts question marks against our recruitment team, who have been really good up until like our hit rate with our signings has been positive. Apart from maybe Dara O'Shea, I don't think there's many question marks about many of them.
Yeah,
I don't like to.
We don't want to single him out, but we've got question marks.
I think my question mark is like we brought him in. Improvements on like Luke McNally, who we sent out on loan to a championship club, who wants to be fighting for the top six, and he was in the playoff final last season and stuff like that. It's sort of like, well,
if you save the money,
you might as well save £7 million. And you've got a lad who's 2 years younger on the books already.
Yeah,
like, I appreciate
give him the exposure and increase that value of him.
Yeah, I appreciate that Dara O'Shea's got 2-3 years of Premier League experience and international experience and stuff, so I can understand the logic, but it's not been a great start. And again, you sort of put question marks going, well, what's Luke McNally's role moving forward?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really fair comment. I think from my perspective, I'm not putting pressure on this team, and I'm not putting pressure on the manager either. And if we do go down this season, and let's be honest, the reality is that the 3 promoted sides probably will do. We're hoping to I think a lot of the comments pre-season that Burnley would finish in the top half, I always thought were ambitious anyway, but it even looks that way now. I think if we do survive, we survive 17th, and that's great. That's absolutely brilliant. We don't need to be any higher up than that. But I think we keep hold of company. If that happens, we keep hold of this squad as much as we can, and we just keep trying again. What I want to see, though, is I don't want us to go down because of stupid mistakes. That if we go down because technically we're not there yet, and it's going to take a couple of years for this team to gel and for this manager to learn. We've got a manager who's never played not played, obviously he has, not managed the Premier League before, so he's learning as well, and I'm prepared to give them time as a project. But something like mental resilience, that's not a technical thing. That is an easy win. That is something that you can sort out in the changing room. So that's where I become disappointed and think, well, who's coaching that? Who's prioritizing that? Because that is something that you don't need to have a £50 million and an amazing left foot to be able to compete with. That's just sports psychology.
What else there is to say?
Yeah. I mean,
it's sort of weird that we're in October. I feel a little bit demoralised.
Yeah.
I want to like talk about like my day going. It's like we all travel like a fair distance and stuff. Like Tom comes from like Derby way, and George, if he's traveling up from like Bristol or Bath or wherever he's at, and I come from like Stockport and stuff.
Yeah, I'm from the coast, so
it's like
I think there's only Adam and George and Charlotte. I keep calling her George. I keep calling her sister. There's only Adam and Charlotte, I think, who are local.
It takes me an hour to drive to Burnley on a match day. I had to fill my car up, and £60, and then you buy your food while you're there and stuff. I buy my dad's as well. That cost me like £20. So I'm like nearly like I'm 80 quid, £100 out of pocket. See us get spanked 4-1 again. I drive home, and it's like 7:30 when I got in. And I was like, my Saturday's literally gone. Like I've got nothing to show for this Saturday whatsoever. Thanks a lot, Burnley. Football's back.
Okay, listeners, I'm gonna caveat this by saying that Of course, that's what we all do, and of course, we're going to do it next weekend as well. But yeah, I do jest a little bit, but it's a really valid point. It's hard. It is hard when times are tough.
Don't say Abby as well. She did say, well, at least it's the international break next weekend. She knew.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think my other half's very much the same. It's just like, is there an international break? Thank God for that, because then she's not going to sulk. But it is true. We do have a sulk. So, okay, we talked about the mental game. We talked about that. Before we move on to analyse a little bit of it, I'm going to take a quick break from you listening to me and Robbie, and I'm going to bring Tom in. Tom, we asked somebody who felt up to it, and Tom, bless him, was the only one who answered the call, because the rest of us were just like, whatever we publish is not printable, so I'm going to decline to. And Tom just recorded a very quick piece for us to give us some thoughts on his reaction to the game. So let's hand over to Tom for a short while.
Good evening, Tom here. Unfortunately, it's a bit of another blast of negativity after the Chelsea game. You'll have heard me rant about the Man United game. I was really unimpressed with that second half display in that game, and once again, company sort of sent us out in the second half to play a lot worse than the first half. Another worrying trend, that Chelsea second half really. I think everyone's come off that feeling lower than a snake's belly, really. And I know that I was probably in the minority after the Man United game. I think people took positives from that, especially from the first half performance. But it left me thinking we're in real trouble this season, and I've not really seen that much yet to change my mind since, particularly for my home form. Chelsea, like United, are not the team they were in recent years. It's easy to look at the fixtures and go, "Oh, Man United, Chelsea." We can't expect anything from those games. But the way they're playing, the way they have played for a good year or so now, and the results they've had against other teams who are going to be down there, or certainly bottom half teams this season, it all tells you that we shouldn't be settling for 0 points, and particularly not in the manner that we got 0 points against Chelsea. The team selection, I think, was a bit strange. I think everyone thought that when it came out. Why the need to make so many changes, especially when we've got an international break coming up. It's not as if there's a midweek game next week or anything. You'd think we'd be used to playing Saturday, Tuesday after last season. The changes that were made, so I could kind of understand Vitinho for Connor Roberts, just because I don't think Roberts has been playing that well. He was maybe just trying to nullify Sterling's pace a little bit, but I think as we saw, it didn't work. I was surprised Vitinho got a new contract, because for me, I don't think he's shown that he's good enough to play in the Premier League, and he certainly didn't show anything on Saturday. Got absolutely roasted by Sterling. I don't think he got a lot of help from another slightly maybe surprise inclusion, Mike Trezor. I think in the first half he did a bit of tracking back, he did a bit of defensive work. In the second half he just completely toughed it off, walking up and down that right hand side, not offering anything going forward, not offering anything defensively, constantly giving the ball away. So I do feel for Vitinho a bit in that sense that he was exposed, but there's no excuse for diving in and giving away the penalty the way he did. Odobert was another surprise inclusion, although you'd have to say he justified his inclusion a little bit more than Trezor did. Took his goal really well, I thought. It's frustrating that yet again, just like the United game, we've got the fullback on toast there. Correa gets booked for a bad tackle, just as Dalot did, and then never got run out again the rest of the game, not causing him any problems, making it a nice, easy second half for him. He's not had a good time at Chelsea, and he's playing out of position, and yet we didn't exploit that situation at all, especially after he was on yellow. So that was really frustrating. And then the other big kind of selection, I can understand obviously Bayer injured, that's why Delcourt played. Alderkiel coming off at half time. No, he was really poor for the goal, and I've seen people saying it's unlucky or whatever. It's not, it's just bad positioning. But did it warrant being hooked at half time? I'm not sure. I think we were quite solid in the first half, and I think we looked worse when O'Shea came on. Delcourt isn't a great ball player. We miss Bayo when he's not there, and I think Alderkiel is probably the second best of the centre halves. So it seemed a bit of an odd one to take him off for O'Shea, who I think O'Shea would have been a good Sean Dyche defender, but he can't play. He can't play with the ball at his feet. So why we've brought him in, I don't know. And then it brings you back to the other kind of big selection question mark that's hanging over us at the minute: Muric or Trafford. Our whole man's have been pretty much Trafford the whole way through so far this season. I didn't think there was any chance of him not playing with the money we spent on him, but I think that's the problem. I think if he'd have cost us 3 or 4 million, he'd be on the bench now, because he's not as good as Muric, I'm sorry to say. I think a lot of people have said it reminds them of the Joe Hart, Tom Heaton debate, and I think for that, Tom Heaton was clearly a level above Joe Hart, and that's why it was a bit strange that it took so long to get him in the team. It wasn't particularly that Hart was playing badly; it's just that he wasn't as good. For me, there's not as much between Muric and Trafford, certainly in terms of the basics of goalkeeping, in terms of shot stopping. Although you have to say Trafford, can you think of many saves this season he's made where you thought that was really good, that saved as a goal there? Me, not really. He's made some saves, of course, but nothing that you wouldn't have expected him to make, I don't think. He's worse than Muric coming off his line. Muric was really bad, obviously, first half of last season, but he did improve a lot, I thought, second half. Trafford's just glued to his line. He's got no presence at all when the balls are coming into the box, as we saw in the Luton game. And his passing, his range of passing is just nowhere near as good as Muric's. You know, he can pass it sort of 5 yards, but he takes so long to do it. He needs 2-3 touches, and it reminds me a bit of when Taylor played last year. He just slowed the attack down because he wasn't up to speed with the passing football we were playing. And it's the same for Trafford at the minute. And when you've got a man who's got a range of passing like Muric, sat on the bench, you know, the second half we were just penned in. We couldn't get out, and sometimes you just need a ball over the top. You know, we've got quick wingers. You've got Koleosha, you've got Odebear, people who can run onto these balls, and it's not being utilised. I don't understand why. Foster, I thought even his back to goal game was really good. He held it up well. The amount of times you want to flick onto himself. So we can play that out ball, but I don't think Trafford can. So I think I'm on Team Muric now, and I think he's probably earned. He's probably worth giving a go in these next couple of games and just see what kind of a difference, if any, it makes. Last point on the selection is just the wingers. Again, I mentioned it was strange that Trezor got the nod, and he certainly didn't justify the selection. Odebear did better, and I wasn't against dropping Koleosha. I think maybe just needs a bit of a rest, or just see what he's like coming off the bench as opposed to starting. But the two real omissions at the minute, Brun Larsen, you'd be fuming if you were him. You know, you come off the bench at Luton, you score that fantastic goal, makes such a big difference, and then you drop to the bench and you only get a cameo when the game's all over. It can't be good for morale, that, because you'd be thinking what do I have to do to get a start. And strange one. And it's the same for Zaroury, you know, one of our best players last season. Obviously got that daffer against Man City. You know, if his name was Kovacic, he could have done that twice and not got sent off. But since then, he just hasn't had a chance. He gets 10 minutes here and there. He plays in that League Cup game and does really well, albeit against poor opposition. But I don't understand why he's not even on the bench. And company said, well, we've got a lot of players of a similar level, but they're certainly not all getting a similar level of game time. So there's a lot to address, I think. I think company has really got to get up to speed. I think he is one of the problems right now. We know that the transfer window wasn't the best. I don't think there's a myriad of options that can come off the bench to really make the team better. So they've got to be coached better. The starting 11s have got to be better. The subs have got to be better. The shape's got to be better. God, a lot's got to be better. But we're hoping now a run of sort of 3 easier fixtures, Bournemouth haven't had a good start. They're actually one of the few teams that are below us. Brentford aren't the team they were last season. They've only won 1 game, same as us. And Palace at home, I can really see Hodgson doing a number on company, but they're a beatable side. So you'd like to say we'll get something from that game. You know, if we get 6, 7, 9 points, you know, from the next 3 games, then things are looking very different. But it's quite hard to be cheerful right now with the amount of sort of glaring problems that there are within the team. Hopefully, Natalie and Robbie will have some more cheery insights for you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Poor Tom's down in the dumps at the moment. So we need to drag him out of it. Tom's usually the eternal optimist, but he's not loving it, isn't Tom? We need to drag him out of this. One thing then that I want to talk about, and given our goal difference and the amount of goals we're shipping this season, I guess there's a couple of question marks. Firstly, like slightly more flippantly, but who the hell is coaching our defence? Because we've got a bit of a mess defensively at the moment. Again, in quite a shift as well, a culture shift from our previous regime that was very well known for being very, very well drilled defensively, unfortunately at the expense of everything else. But I'm going to I'm going to have to raise it. And this isn't necessarily us talking, listeners, but I am seeing a relentless barrage of question marks over our keeper situation. So we have to address it because that's what our listeners are talking about. There are significant calls now and voices over social media declaring that it is time for Muric to be brought back in. And I think some of the comments, Robbie, have been that he was unfair to lose his position in the first place. He should have at least been given a chance to show what he can do before Trafford was brought in. And a lot of fans remain unconvinced yet that Trafford is the right man for the job at this moment in time. This is a real tough one because Muric is not perfect. And if we all remember the early part of last season in the Championship, there were a lot of calls for Muric to be dropped and Peacock Farrell to be brought in. So let's not completely wash over Muric's performances last season. There were a few conduct issues that we understand, behavioural patterns, and also a few Muric moments. I guess without wanting to throw you completely under the bus, Robbie, but where do you stand with that? What camp are you in?
I'm still on the side of Trafford.
Okay.
I understand the logic. and I understand the calls for Muric because he wasn't. It was harsh on him because he did get better as the season went on. I think it's important to understand that pretty much all the goals we conceded, Trafford can do nothing about them.
Yeah.
This is a very, very similar situation to the 18-19 season when we had Joe Hart in net, where Joe Hart, he had, again, all the goals he conceded he could do very little about. I seem to remember the Palace game at Selhurst Park. We lost the game 2-0. If it wasn't for Joe Hart, it would have been like 5 or 6 fairly comfortably. So there were calls then very similar, sort of like, oh, we want Tom Heaton back in, and Sean Dyche sort of rolled the dice and he put Tom Heaton in for the West Ham game, and then I think we went 8 or 9 games undefeated after that, and ultimately it kept us up.
Yeah.
So whether Company has to do something very similar where he's sort of chopped and changed his back four a few times, he's looked like he's found a stable midfield with Brownhill, Cullen and Burge. Again, rolls the dice and goes Muric just to give it a go. Let's just see what happens. Again, it might be the same old problems, you don't know, but it does remind me of that 18-19 season of like Hart and Heaton.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think one of the problems that we face as well is that, Trafford's pulled out some really great saves. He's pulled out some moments of real brilliance, which are showing what the scouting network saw in him in the first place and why we've taken that money out for him. For me, it's really difficult because I personally don't feel like he commands his area that well, but then Muric doesn't either. So I think for me, and this feels like a little bit of a lazy stereotype and a bit of a thing to say that because I don't really know what else to say with it. Because listen, I'm going to be honest with you, listeners. I couldn't sit here now and tell you why specifically I'm not feeling Trafford and why I think Muric might be better. It's really difficult. It's a very close. It's like 50.5, 49.5. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's really very, very close. What I do miss is the distribution and the part that Muric has to play in keeping the possession football. We've not been able to keep possession a lot this season. Even against Luton, it didn't really go for us as much as we would have liked it to have done. And Muric is really key to that. He does distribute a lot better than Trafford does. Now, for that to work, we do need that partnership of Bayer and either Alderkirk or Ekdal in the centre half position, neither of which we've got at the moment because of injuries. But I do think there's an element of a settled back four as well that isn't quite working at the moment. We've had to chop and change a lot. I guess that's my final question to you then on the keeper situation, Robbie. Like how impactful would Muric be able to be in a possession game in this league? Or because if he isn't, does it really matter?
The two very similar goalkeepers anyways. It's the way we want to play. a ball playing goalkeeper. You know, he pushed for Bruggen last summer,
Yeah.
failed to get him, and then
Where did he go in the end?
He got Brighton, hasn't he?
Ah, of course. Yeah.
So he's been playing really well for Brighton. So Brighton Brighton chop and change their goalkeeper. I think for Bruggen plays the home games and Jason Steele plays their away games.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's again. I thought that Arsenal were going to do something similar with like Ramsdale and Raya, but doesn't appear to be the case now. Obviously, yeah, Company wanted Verbruggen last summer. He went for him again this summer. So he obviously saw Muric as a short-term solution.
Yeah.
Obviously, again with the fee we pay for Muric was only about $1 million, $2 million, something like that, which is pretty low money even in this market now. And then we've gone out and broken our transfer record for Trafford, and we were prepared to do it for Verbruggen as well.
Yeah.
So Muric is a number one. We have to trust the Company on that.
Yeah, it's really tough. It is really tough.
From what I've seen of Muric, it's a horrible sort of comparison because what we've seen of Muric in the cup games against Forest, and he was really good at Salford. It's weird to come. It's not fair to say. Well, Muric was really good at Salford. He even
Let's put him against today.
Let's throw him in against Chelsea. It definitely work. But I think Muric has to say it. Muric knows where he wants to play the pass. I think Muric is like a pass ahead, if that makes sense. I think when Trafford gets the ball, he wants to play a pass, but he's unsure on it.
Yeah, he's thinking of like one step.
I think he's like, I think he knows the pass. He looks up and that pass isn't on. It's gone straight away. And I think Muric already has like a plan B in his mind.
Yeah.
So I think he has that bit more certainty, whether it comes down to experience of playing at a higher level or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, it's Company's call at the end of the day. I understand the logic of having the calls for Muric to start against Brentford, but I don't think it'll solve our problems.
No, I agree. Okay, let's finish off, Robbie. 10 wins are going to be needed this season. We haven't got any bonus points off the 5 big teams that we played. I think we've got exactly the right amount of points that I was expecting at this point in the season 4. So I don't think we're behind in points. I do think United at home was a missed opportunity. I think we could have beat them because they were poor. And so we need to consider which teams this season we're going to get these bonus points from, and where we get those 10 wins from. So taking into account that the older teams like your Newcastles and your Villas are now really, really tough to beat and are going to be up there at the end of the season, what kind of teams are you expecting us to beat, and do you think we can get those 10 wins to survive?
I expect us to beat anyone because you can look like an idiot afterwards, but I think, like I said it before, I think Bournemouth away is a must win now, or a must not lose at least. I think Palace at home is a must win just because psychologically we need to get that first home win on the board.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who we got after that. I'm trying to think if it's another winnable game after Palace.
That's a good point, actually. Just give me a second. You carry on, and I'll get
too sure.
I'd try not to look too far ahead for Burnley results. You carry on talking, and I'll get you the fixtures.
Period we sort of identified when the fixtures come out, sort of going, right, let's get those tough games out of the way.
Yeah.
And then we sort of like, right, let's use this period to actually see where we are. So because we've had the worst case scenario, we're all panicking. And it's like, oh God, Brentford away. Oh God, we have to get something at Brentford away. And it's like, Bournemouth away is a must win. And again, you sort of saw what Everton did to Bournemouth at Goodison. It's like, they're not very good then.
So the next,
they'll probably look at the same thing as us and go,
exactly,
they're not very good either.
Let's get them. So we've got the next 6 Premier League fixtures. We've got Brentford away, Bournemouth away, Palace at home, Arsenal away, and then West Ham at home and Sheffield United at home. So let's ignore that Arsenal one, but we have got 5 out of 6 very winnable games there: Brentford, Bournemouth, Palace, West Ham, and Sheffield United. and then we play Wolves, and then we've got Brighton, and then we've got Everton. You know what? Right up to
peak period, Christmas.
Yeah, this is a really important period. And you know what? By the time we get to Christmas, we could be looking at a completely different landscape here. It's very difficult. I understand why fans are feeling a bit down in the dumps after the start we've had. But my goodness, our season hasn't even really properly started yet.
So we wanted to wait till we got to this period and then to see where we are. And from the small sample size that we've seen at Forest away and Luton away, it has been fairly positive.
Yeah, it really has.
So again, it's just like I said before, if we had lost the game against Chelsea 2-1, let's say we just had that mad 5 minutes in the second half, concede that penalty, lose to a penalty, and it's like, well, we lost to Chelsea through a fluky on goal, which 9 times out of 10 goes out for a corner, and a rash decision by Vitinho to hack down Sterling because he got the better of him.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, it's like, again, it's sort of like we've lost the game where it's can really do, and it's like capitulated after that moment. It's sort of like it's all doom and gloom again. It's like it's just Spurs and Villa all over again, where we just look very disjointed. We don't look anywhere near the side that we saw for certainly that second half of last season, where we absolutely steamroll teams week in, week out.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So I thought that was red wine then, Robbie. I was like, my goodness, Robbie's really is getting very depressed. It's like Monday night drinking club. I was like, okay.
I couldn't lie and say it's vodka, but it is only water.
It's like Monday night drinking club. Okay, well, let's leave it there. I think that is our thoughts of where we are right now. I think we have to now see where we are after the next 6 games. I think we'll wait and see what happens with the keeper situation. But hold your nerve, Clarets, because we've been here before and we only need to get to 17th. And even if we don't get to 17th and we go down again, we are building something really like key at Burnley. We've got a management and a coaching side that are impressive. We've got a really exciting young group of players who will learn and who will improve. So let's see where we get to. We're going to have a preview show and look ahead to Brentford this weekend, and then we'll come back to you after that and see where we are. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Charlotte. And yeah, we will check in with you next week. So stay strong, Clarets, and drop us a line. Let us know how you're feeling. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.
The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners TalkSport. We are proud to be associated with the TalkSport Fan Network.